Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, what's next for Mali? The country's new military leaders and West African mediators wrap up days of talks without settling on how to return to civilian rule. IBK, the leader, ousted in last week's coup, says that he does not want to come back. Also, more than 1,000 villagers in Nigeria have been killed this year in escalating clashes in the centre and northwest. Amnesty International accuses security forces of having turned their backs on vulnerable communities being targeted by armed gangs. And in Kenya, a group of mainly Maasai women are taking up key conservation roles. They've joined Team Lioness, using their insider knowledge of their community to work as rangers. But first, 3 days of discussion between the leaders of Mali's military coup and mediators from the West African bloc, ECOWAS, wrapped up on Monday with few concrete decisions. The question of who will lead Mali and how is top of the agenda in the wake of the ousting of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita last week. One thing that does appear certain is that IBK will not be reinstated. Mediators say that he said that he was not forced to announce his resignation and that he does not want to return to politics. The junta is facing threats of regional sanctions, and the head of the ECOWAS delegation says that what happens next is up to the country itself.
ECOWAS will not come and impose a government on the people of Mali.
La CEDEAO ne viendra pas ici imposer un gouvernement au peuple malien.
Whether elected government or appointed transitional government must be decided by the Malian people.
Well, Mohamed Salah tells us more about the progress of the negotiations.
3 days of negotiation between ECOWAS delegation and CNSP junta leaders. They discussed on several points such as the lifting of sanctions against Mali, the defeat of Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, the president, and the return to normalcy. According to CNSP spokesman Major Colonel Wage, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita doesn't want to come to power anymore. So those are some points. Especially the transition, how the transition will be done in Mali. But they, according to junta, this will be decided inside with Malian.
So what needs to be in place for this transition to normalcy to happen?
Oh, first of all, ECOWAS and junta must agree because tomorrow ECOWAS will govern. The head state of ECOWAS will govern and take this decision. So all the eyes are on ECOWAS meeting of tomorrow. Will they lift the sanction against Mali? What they say. So everything now depends on this. Hopefully they will add the sanctions and allow the junta and Malian people to decide how the transition will be rolled during the next coming months or days.
So the junta and the Malian people, tell us a bit more about specifically who's going to be involved in these conversations going forward.
So this is Malian problem and it will be discussed among Malian. They say that everybody will be included. There will be inclusivity and inclusion because political leaders, unions, political parties, society, civilian society, everybody will come on the table of negotiation and discuss how this transition will be happening in the next coming months in Mali.
Mohamed Salah there for us in Bamako. Well, look now at some news in brief. The UN slammed violence that broke out at an anti-government protest in Tripoli on Sunday. Security personnel aimed guns at crowds that were demonstrating against corruption and instability in the war-torn country. Demonstrators accused the Government of National Accord, or the GNA, of overseeing the what they're calling slow death of Libya. The rallies come just days after warring rival administrations announced a ceasefire and plans to hold nationwide elections. However, Eastern strongman Khalifa Haftar, who launched an attack on Tripoli in 2019, has rejected those plans, calling them a media stunt on the part of the GNA. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara submitted his application to run for a third term, despite opponents who say that it is unconstitutional for him to contest the October election. The Constitutional Court will ultimately make a ruling on Ouattara's candidacy. His opponents say that the two-term time limit in the Constitution bars him from running again. However, he says his first two mandates don't count under the new Constitution, which was adopted in 2016. A Zimbabwean journalist who's been openly critical of the government has been denied bail for a third time. Hopewell Chinono was arrested last month, accused of inciting public violence over anti-government protests in July. Chinono's supporters say that he's being politically targeted. He was responsible for exposing corruption in state tenders for COVID-19 equipment, and that led to the dismissal of the health minister in July. Now, Nigeria has been accused of abandoning rural communities in the centre and northwest to the ravages of armed gangs. Amnesty International reckons that more than 1,100 villagers have been killed in attacks between January and the end of June. Victims' communities are often looted and set on fire. Raiders often use kidnapping to extort families left behind. Investigators are blaming both state and federal authorities for dropping the ball in heading off what they believe to be predictable attacks. Sam Olukoya joins us now with more. Sam, so where and why are these attacks happening?
Well, these attacks are happening in northern Nigeria, as far north as Sokoto State, Zamfara State, and you have it happening also in central Nigeria, like states like Plateau, Nasarawa, and Taraba. We've seen these attacks started initially as purely criminal situations where armed gangs go to villages, rob people, and take their property, kidnap them. But gradually, we are beginning to see an influx of groups like Boko Haram. We are seeing an influx of groups like ISWAP, which is affiliated to ISIS. So it has actually complicated the situation because it goes just beyond ordinary criminality to terrorist activities. The security there is very, very poor, and it has become a very convenient situation for groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP to try to establish a footing in the area.
And why is security there so poor? Why are security forces struggling to get ahead of violence that on one hand is predictable, but also is happening in an area that the government has long stated it's focusing on to try and restore security to?
I think that the Nigerian government, and by extension the Nigerian military, are not doing enough. I mean, first, the border in that area in northern Nigeria is extremely porous to the extent that arms are coming in from places like Libya, from places like Mali. So that by itself is a problem. When you have arms, it fuels this type of conflict. And also, you will recall that the Nigerian military has been trying to quell insurgency in the northeast, and this has gone on for almost 11 years. And this, to be clear, has affected the morale of the troops. Troops from the northeast fighting Boko Haram are being deployed to the northwest. And for people who have fought for almost 11 years, morale is extremely low, and it's difficult to tackle the situation. Then also, there is a feeling that there are elements within the military at the senior cadre level who are deliberately allowing this insurgency to go on for their own personal purposes. And for the lower ranks, it's like, well, there's nothing we can do. This continues to go on because there's internal sabotage. So some of these problems have gone a long way to make this conflict to get extended. And of course, the Americans have warned that Nigeria has to do something. Otherwise, this problem will spread to other parts of the country. For a military that is bogged down, trying to quell insurgency in the northeast, and now we have this problem in the northwest and part of the central region, it's going to be a problem if it starts going to the southern part of the country. I mean, many have suggested that the remedy to this is to increase, you have to recruit massively. Otherwise, the Nigerian military, as it is today, many believe it's not in a position to quell this type of problem, except you have very massive recruitment to take care of the problem.
Thanks very much. Sam Olukoya there for us in Lagos. Well, finally, a group of Kenyan women have taken their knowledge and appreciation of local wildlife and joined a professional patrol unit. Called the Lionesses, they've become rangers near the country's Amboseli National Park. Nicholas Chemin tells us more.
Women form a ranger unit known as the Lionesses. The 8 rangers patrol a conservation area near Kenya's Amboseli National Park. All the women are from the Maasai community who live in the region. A big part of their job is gathering information from the locals.
We share with them some information like we ask them if there is any predation case, any incident that they have come across that we might not be aware. They share with us information freely because they love us. We are just from this local community.
The women patrol 150,000 acres of land shared by wildlife and human beings. They don't carry weapons, but recently that didn't prevent them from arresting 2 men who were slaughtering a giraffe. The rangers say that because of the coronavirus, poverty has risen, and this has led to a rise in poaching.
Since the corona started on the lockdown, there is bush meeting whereby people are idle, people are jobless, they don't have food, and they end up going to the forest doing poaching.
The Kenyan government has put in place long jail terms and big fines for poachers. It says poaching is harming tourism, a major foreign exchange earner for the country. Because of the coronavirus, the authorities expect the number of foreign tourists visiting Kenya to drop by up to about 85% this year and the next.
Well, that's it for Iron Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.